Yeah, I used to train the public. I used to train the BBC. I used to train social action broadcasters. Now I do a lot of work with Extinction Rebellion, or XR for short. So my real sincere apologies to non-Extinction Rebellion people. I've got a lot of Extinction Rebellion, I'll call it XR for short. I've got a lot of XR examples and some jargon. So if I go all XR on you, please stop me and chip in and interrupt. That's completely fine. So hopefully this is going to be a practical evening. Think about your next action for throughout this training, and you'll have some time during this to just get a tiny bit of work started on the various things that you need to get in place for actually dealing with the media. So we'll also have some time, 2 times, where you're going to be doing that work. So if you need to nip off and fix some food or some drinks or have a pee or anything, that's fine. There'll be two of those sessions. So the plan of what we're going to be doing, I think I have no idea what you've got up there, Tatiana. The plan, yes, you've got the plan up, haven't you? And so, yeah, you've all read that. That was in the blurb about what we're going to be doing. And yes, I've told you deliberately what my background is, but I haven't told you who I am as a speaker. So here goes on to the next slide, which should say speakers. You need to use a name that you're okay with going public. So your full name. Now, my full name is Johanna Bucklow, which is a bit of a handful. So it's pronounced with a Y sometimes. It's written with a J. So if I'm in broadcast, I will say Johanna, but call me Yo for short. Because if your pronunciation is an issue, then, make sure you're clear when you're going to use your name. So you need your full name. You need your job description. I've given you a CV rather than a job description, but it isn't a CV. You need to pick 1 or 2 of these. So if I was doing something in the media, I'd probably be saying, I might be saying I'm a grandmother. I might be saying I'm a retired social action broadcaster. I might be saying I'm an activist with Extinction Rebellion. But I'd pick 1 of those. I'd also give my age for local media. They're obsessed with that. I'm 62 tomorrow. Happy birthday to me. And the area in which I live is Gedling, which is an area of Nottingham. So those are the things that you often read in a local paper. And I'm going to ask you now to think through what your introduction would be. I call this, for shorthand, I call this a media introduction. A name you're happy using, full name, a job description as to who you are, what your age is, and if you're really shy about it, you can say retired, but they do like your age. You could round it up to a decade. You say, I'm in my 20s, I'm in my 30s, and the area you live. So we're going to be going into breakout rooms in pairs, and you're going to be introducing yourself using those 4 pieces of information. So this is, next slide, it is not a check-in. It is an exchange of media introductions. So you've got a very short amount of time to do it. You're going to be in those breakout rooms for a total of 2 minutes. So is everybody totally clear about what we're doing? So you're going in a breakout room, you're going to go through your media description, and then you have a little bit of time to talk, and then you're going to get whisked back to the main room. Is everyone okay with that? Okay, right then. So if we could open the breakout rooms, that'd be brilliant.
Okay, setting them up right now.
Thank you very much.
And all right, so I'm setting them up for 1 minute with a 1 minute countdown timer.
Brilliant.
So so it's going to be 2 minutes total. And I'm making sure that everyone's got rooms to be in with people, because I'm keeping Joe and I out of them for a moment. Okay. All right, so I'm opening breakup rooms. Oh God.
No breaking up.
No breaking up. We're breakout rooms now, and no, breakouts are not recorded. So here we go.
We're muted. That's it. Okay, I can't see who's back and who isn't back. I don't know if anybody else can. Can anybody else? Are we the only ones in here, Tatiana?
No.
Is it? I can't see the screen at all. Is everybody back now?
Let me see. It looks like, yeah, it looks like
we're back.
Hello, thank you. Sorry, I can't see anything. I think that must be being spotted on. Right. Okay. Breakout is not recorded. No, sorry. I don't know whether that question came in first. Apologies, but no, Breakout is not recorded. Okay, then. So I'm assuming everybody's back. The next slide, please, Tatiana, is says create a message. The message is what you're trying to publicize. It's a simple slogan or a simple phrase that sums up your aim and what you're trying to say or what you're trying to highlight. It's a description really of what is, what you'd say to somebody if you were talking to them across the garden fence. Be something that people can very easily understand. And I don't know, this is where I said, Tatiana, these weird clicky things. If you click on it, I don't know what you guys can see on your screen, if you can see Tatiana's screen or not. But it's, there should be a blue box with an arrow beneath it. And then if you can click the next one.
Have them all up, love.
Say again?
Have them all up. It must be new Brilliant. And local.
Excellent. Okay, that's good. So you go for your message. It needs to be new. It needs to be something that hasn't happened before, which is why creating activities and marches and actions and protests is new, which is why we do it. If you've done it before, if you've said it before, it's not news and they won't pick it up. And they always like to localize stuff. It's important that things are localized. So there needs to be a link about why this subject is relevant to your town or your county or your region. And you can localize a national event by taking a local angle. Now, when you're creating your message, you need to liaise with actions. That's important because you need the message to make sense in terms of what you're doing. And it needs to make sense in terms of the purpose of the action. And liaising with arts is really important because the visuals of the actions, the banners, the placards and everything else like that need to make sense as well. And the next slide, so message is key. Message is absolutely key. And it's actually very difficult to create. The next slide is about creating your message. So the bits in blue, the bit at the top left-hand side in blue is the message. And the message is the slogan over the garden wall to your neighbour or whatever it is. And when you're doing that, when you're creating that message, it needs to be understandable and you need to have facts to back it up. Now, the fact is not the message. The message has sources. It has citations or sources, and those facts back up the message. Now, I've stolen this message from the Extinction Rebellion messaging document from XR UK, except I changed the language and made it more over the garden wall friendly. And the facts that back up the message are the 5 largest oil and gas companies, blah, blah, blah. And there are sources. Now, I've suggested here a different source. You can see the influence map, which is very, good, respectable source. And also there's Unearthed Greenpeace. Now, local media we're particularly talking about, sadly, tends to be really very conservative. So rather than using Greenpeace, I would actually use the BBC. It's more mainstream and a more acceptable source, really. And in fact, you are going to need your message. You're going to need facts to back up your message. And you're going to need sources of those facts. And the more respectable, the better. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to make a media list. We're going to prepare a media list. You're going to have a little bit of time to do that. Excuse me. Just putting frozen peas over the router. There we go. We're going to prepare a media list and you're going to have time to kind of have a quick rummage around this rather than actually trying to write yourself a nice media list, I think. So now if you could create yourself a Google spreadsheet or a Google document and you title it in a similar way to the media list that you'll see on the screens there, And I've got a series of suggestions of places that you can go to find out stuff about your local media. And that is, now give me 2 seconds. I've jumped back. I've got it. Okay, I've put in a newspaper one, and I'm going to put 2 radio ones in, and follow the links that I'm putting in the chat. And you might want to save the links that are going into the chat, but actually those will be available, thanks to Tatiana. They will be available in a document for you as well. And this will tell you documents media outlets you might not have actually come across. And I think it's extremely important that we do land up covering the more minority stuff. People tend to be a bit like, oh, it's on the BBC, therefore it's wonderful. Well, no, people who follow local media are generally very keen on making sure that they're involved in their community, their local communities. So they are very well worth checking out, these kinds of sources. Right here, I don't know if you can see, because I know I'm very little, where I'm staying at the moment, says Calderdale Valley and Todmorden Pages. This comes through the letterbox. A lot of people think, well, it's got to be cat litter. It's primarily advertising, but they put in quite a lot of editorial. And if you phone them up, the chances are that they'll say to you, oh, great, you can buy an advert. You go, no, thank you, don't want to buy an advert. And you say, and they say, well, we could do an advertorial, which means it'll look like it's an article, but actually, they want to charge for it. And if you say, no, not interested, but I'll send you an article, very often they'll print it because they're desperate to print local stuff. As long as you localize it. If you don't localize it, you have not a snowflake's hope. But if you localize it, you make it relevant to the Calder Valley, then you'll get it in. So hunt out the small. You'll be surprised how well read it is. Check out some of these links. And if you can put onto your document stuff you find from these links, we're going to give you a bit of time to sit and work on all of this lot. And I think probably, first of all, I want to ask if anybody's got any questions before I leave you to have a good rummage around those sites. Has anybody got any questions or queries? Let me just see if we can change the view so that we can see people if they want to put their hands up or anything. I can see Hamda. We have a raised hand. So can you?
Yes.
Brilliant.
Hi, can you hear me clearly?
Great. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Just what you've gone through so far is really, really beneficial. So thank you so much for that. I just had a question about on the media list. What do you mean by deadline? Is that a deadline that we set ourselves to contact the media, or is that like a deadline that the media have to be contacted by, that, like in terms of like when they print or broadcast?
Brilliant question. Thank you very much. I am assuming knowledge. Thank you. If your publication comes out on a Thursday, it might be that the deadline for them receiving information is going to be, say it comes out on a Thursday, say their deadline might be Tuesday. So whereas if it's a local community radio station, they're broadcasting all the time. So it's probably much more immediate. So you need to find out the publication date and the deadline of each publication and each, there are some community radio stations that only run at the weekend. So all of that stuff you need to know, because you need to time it in relation to when your action is, when your activity is. So thank you. Very good question. It's because I can't see the screen. I haven't talked you through it. Thank you. Great. So somebody else has a raised hand. I can't see any names. Gordon. I can see Gordon.
Yes, you're talking about going local. Is it worth using next door?
Next door. What's next door, please?
It's a website where it's normally limited to your immediate area, and you can join it. You find out who your neighbours are, and there's a whole lot of ads about lost cats and lost dogs, etc.
I think if people read it, it's worth going there. Absolutely, why not? Absolutely. Good idea.
Thank you.
I guess my background is print and broadcast, so I don't automatically think of that, but you're absolutely right. Yeah. Who else has got a question? I can't see.
I think Hamza just still has a hand raised from before, so I don't think that's a question. But yeah, if Colin, go right ahead. You're on mute, love.
Sorry, it was about the deadline. That's obviously a very good point. Do you know an easy way to find out the deadline of a paper?
It's a heck of a faff, but you've got to ring them up and ask them. But if it's a daily, you will get onto timing when to send your press release towards the end of this evening's chat. So it's a bit of a plod round to find out is the answer. But for dailies, there's usually, in fact, for all newsrooms, they're usually very busy from about 7 o'clock in the morning. That's when everything that is current, everything that is new and therefore news will arrive that morning. So 7 a.m. is generally a very good time to send a press release to a daily who is when you've got an action that day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A quick query from me. How long would you like the breakout rooms for, love?
Oh, don't need a breakout room. What we'll do is if everybody can ferret away and rummage through those web links and have a look, what I'll do is I'll just sit here calmly and make sure my router stays cool. And if anybody wants to ask questions, then just chip in because they'll be useful for everybody to hear. So chip in, and otherwise get your nose down. And I reckon if we could have until about 1:45, well, not about, I'm from the media, I like it exactly. So let's start work again at 7:45. So you've actually got 10 minutes. If you wanted to wander off, if you wanted to sit down and look at those links, get started on some of this, at least get a reference document started that you know you're going to be working from. And look for the small, don't go just for the obvious. That would be great. So is that okay, everybody? Okay. Right, so any questions at any time, please feel free to just chip in and I'll be fairly quiet and I'll let you guys carry on working.
I'm just pausing it for the 10 minutes.
Yeah, that makes sense. We can always switch it on again if anybody's got a question, because questions are usually very good. And somebody's just put in chat, what about 4chan Reddit Imager? Now, this is more about broadcast media. This is more about telly, radio, print. But I certainly think that if you are on any of those groups, I would say yes, use them. Absolutely. I think everywhere is worth spreading the message. There's an audience everywhere.
Yeah, Goldfish, actually, we're on Signal together. So if you want to send me any questions you have on Signal, I can message you just so you know who I am.
Yes, Signal is a good secure channel.
Could I ask a question?
Of course, please do. Fire away.
Is there any kind of real limit to how small? Because obviously at your very bottom level, you've got Parish magazines and so on.
Yep.
Is that worth any time, or is that just going to be straight, no, we don't really do politics here, go away?
Again, excellent question. I think Parish magazines are great if you can get into them. I think people underestimate the very local, very much so. And if you think about how many people, this is pre-COVID, think about how many people you could get into a village hall or a community centre in a town. How many people would you get into a village hall or that other kind of hall for a Heading for Extinction talk? Not very many. If you think about how many people will read a Parish magazine in comparison to a room full of people who've actually bothered to get their coat on and come out in an evening, it is well worth going for very tiny. And an awful lot, and I ought to say this bit when it's being recorded, an awful lot of people, of smaller papers, parish papers, small magazines and stuff, will print a cat being stuck in a shed. They're recording in progress. I was just saying, Vincent just asked a really good question about, is it worth doing parish magazines? I say absolutely yes, because if you can get 50 people into a hall in the evening for a talk, a Heading for Extinction talk, or a come and join this coalition of people, that is actually not very many people in relation to how many people will read the Parish magazine. So even if it's really tiny, go for it. And very often, the very tiny are also very desperate for any news at all. They will print a cat is stuck in a shed. So go for it. They'll be really pleased to be invited to write something. The most important thing, however, is that you make it local. So the person who writes it has to write something quite personal. They live in that parish and they write about it from their point of view. So yeah, that's what I'd say. So any other questions? We've got about 4 minutes left for you to keep working on that. Shall I shush so that you guys can carry on working?
Hello.
Oh, someone just asked in private message if we can be sharing the slides after the meeting.
Yes, I believe that is possible. Yeah. Okay, people. Right, 10 seconds to back to work. But before I, whip you into shape, any more questions or queries on the media list? Okay. Right then. So your media list needs to have, as I'm sure you've discovered from that tiny taste of working at it, it's quite a long job getting that together. It needs to be a working document. It needs to be something you add to and that you develop. And that what you'll do is leave space for development, and you might land up putting down names of journalists, interests of journalists, if you had a good experience with them or a bad experience with them or whatever. So work on that. Check out anything and everything that you can find that is nearby. Like I picked up this publication, check out everything you can find and add it to your list, working document. And it's by the end, if you know somebody who's good with spreadsheets or you're good with spreadsheets, you can organize so that you can copy and highlight all of the emails and send your press releases off to various email sections as you want. Really, really useful documents. Save you hours of work when you've got this done. So next, I'm talking about press releases, like what the heck's a press release? Okay. A press release means here's some information that is new and local and of interest to you that I'm sending to you, and I'm sending it to a whole lot of other bits of the media as well. It's the standard way that we communicate with broadcast media and print media. So a press release, the headline of a press release. Oh, and Tatiana is being beautifully psychic and has done exactly what I need without me telling her. Thank you. The headline is short and informative. It is the whole story all in one sentence. It's really important to get it right. It's not the headline that you see written in the newspaper. That's written by a different person to the person who writes the article, which is quite often why the two don't quite match up properly. But the headline that you write tells them what's going on really simply. And the headline is both the title of your email, and it's also at the heading at the top of the text which you're going to write, which goes into the body of the email. So, for example, road closure for climate demonstration on Saturday. So it's boring, but it tells them what they need to know. So you're not looking to write something that's a brilliant piece of journalism. You're looking at writing the shortest possible facts that will interest them. Now, the reason I mentioned road closures is quite deliberate. There are 3 things that local media adore. One of them is road closures and traffic holdups and blockages. The other 2 are wheelie bins and dog poo. Those are the 3 things that really get local media going. So one of the things that anybody who's involved in any demonstration, any pressure organization is very good at is road closures. So bear that in mind. So as I say, it needs to be simple. It needs to be organized. And I think that's probably fairly clear. So be simple with that. The next slide is about press releases. You might have heard of the 5WH. And
sorry, Joe. Marvina just raised her hand.
Oh, so sorry. I can't see anybody. Yeah, fire away.
So thank you, Joe, for this amazing work you're doing. I was just going to ask for marginalised and ethnic minority groups. Obviously, if we said like we're going to do something, it's normally really passionate to our community. So how do we make our titles more exciting because I don't think we would have anything to do with those exciting words that you said. And if we said road closure, because we're ethnic minorities, we know straight away police would just see that as, aha, that's where I can go and get all the migrants now. So like, how do we get our message across with to capture so like, let's say it's BLM now, and we wanted to really capture them to come to our protests, what would you advise us? Or it's to do with refugees or asylum seekers. What kind of touchy words should we be using to toggle the heartstrings?
Those specific important words are going to be but you say over the garden wall to your neighbour. Those are the things that you say to somebody in the shop when you meet them, and you say, I need to tell you what we're doing. We've got a meeting, Black Lives Matter, blah, blah, blah. So that's the message. So the message is the important bit as to what you're trying to mobilise people to do. The headline is aimed at the journalist, so it's different. The headline is boring. Don't worry about making the headline exciting. The headline is to pique the interest of the journalist. And what I would be doing if I'm specifically looking at targeting Black groups, I would be looking at obviously going to the minority radio stations, minority publications, all of that kind of thing, some of the faith-based broadcasting organizations, but you generally find that you are going to be getting a lot of people interested through specific channels, and they are going to have, you can't speak in any organization without assuming that there are going to be infiltrators there. You absolutely can't. So I think that's something we all have to just try very hard to be very heading. Sorry, can you say that again?
Would you put I don't know, nationality and borders bill protest outside as a heading, or would you put is this person killed in police custody demo here?
If you're trying to, if somebody was killed in police custody, that will get picked up by mainstream media.
Yeah, but if you're sending a press release out saying this is on, what would you put in the heading if it's is relating to marginalized people? Because
I would do
climate applies to everybody, and there's more openness to publishing that stuff. So what would be a good heading example for something like this?
I would say if it's a protest, if it's a gathering, if it's that kind of thing, it is mass disruption that always gets the media interested, unfortunately.
It doesn't. Trust me, it does not. So I just wondering about a heading what would you put in a heading if it was that kind of event?
We're talking, it's difficult because there's what kind of event. This is where I'm really interested. You say, can you tell me, can you give me an example of what you...
Let me give you an example, if that's okay. So, young man died in custody after being arrested by police. Just say that's their title now. To just be like, and then you go into the body of, on Friday, that person got arrested. We are gathering at this location to be able to amplify the voice. We want no justice, no peace. That could be the example. But what we've noticed when it comes to ethnic minority groups, no one ever, we literally don't get no bites at all in the media, at all. I could be wrong. There might be other ethnic minority people here who say
You're not wrong. It's really much more challenging.
Nobody actually looks at us and the only way we even get into our local communities, we have to know someone. It's to get any piece kind of publicized, or it has to have a white face for it to actually get. I'm being real, so yeah. Sorry. It has to have a white face leading a campaign for people to actually turn up to the campaign 99% of the time. That's the reality, our reality. So I think that's why we were trying to like see what words to say because we tried.
Right. I think that there are no right words to say. I think it's a complicated, every single event that we as activists create has got to have its own precisely honed words. What I would love to do is to have a look at what you've done, and maybe, I'd be more than happy to talk to you outside the Zoom and actually really pick some stuff apart about exactly what's been happening, and because you're absolutely, every area is different. I'm talking very generally about local media, but local media varies from town to town. I mean, the local media in Liverpool is very different to the local media in Nottingham. So I would be more than happy to kind of be a consultant with you, if you like, and help you work out your next plan of action, because what we consider to be incredibly important, sometimes we can miss things because we don't hit the local angle. It's localizing things is so important for local news. And I have absolutely no doubt that there's going to be an element of racism that kicks in as well. Absolutely none. But I can't say without looking at exactly what's, some examples of what you have done. So please do get in touch. I'm sorry to give a really rubbish answer on a public.
Something would saying, okay, custody death protest outside Marks and Spencer's town, would that be a reasonable heading for, with your press release? Because I know that I word them quite carefully. I word them, the way I word things is often reflective of what people in the press anyway do. So I don't think it's necessarily that, but is that a reasonable heading? I don't think that our headings are going to change it, to be honest, because a lot of people won't touch it with a barge pole when it's relating to a marginalized people community. You get the odd journalist who will, and sometimes they want someone to do a response, is to say an MP or whatever, and that changes the dynamic a bit. But normally you need a white face, or you need a important organization with relationships already. And we can't do road closures, like the woman said. It's just not a viable method. People from communities will show up quite often, and you share it on Facebook or whatever, but getting it in the press is harder. But I have found groups like Women Reclaim are quite useful sometimes for these things when it's affecting a woman. And there's something. So if you've got things have ended up in things like the Mirror from there. And like I did a vigil for Sabina Nessa, who was a racialized woman who was murdered. And that ended up in the Mirror with the other stuff. I didn't know it was going to end up there. But I think that is another angle of like tailoring towards harm to children or women, and putting that in your body can sometimes work. But the Facebook groups can be sometimes more helpful than the actual press. Because one of the journalists I found was good. He moved on to a different place. He gave me some other contacts. The other person just not as interested in going there.
You're absolutely right that creating relationships is incredibly important. It really makes a heck of a difference. And that's something that you absolutely have to land up doing over a period of time. You're absolutely right. But I think we also do need to look at exactly what's happening. I'd love to work with you guys in, around a specific thing that you've got coming up, and seeing if I can help you work it out, and see if we can organise to not keep any white faces in there and get this sort of coverage that you need. But I think you will always find that you go to any specialist group to publicise what you're interested in, and they will be interested. Whereas mainstream media, which is what we're talking about here primarily, is never going to be as interested. So if you go to a black radio station, you're going to get a lot more interest than if you go to the local BBC radio station. And Similarly, Extinction Rebellion is going to get a lot more interest if it publishes something in a gardening magazine than if it tries to get it in the Daily Mail. It's how it goes. But I would really like to work with you, is all I can say. I don't think there are any magic words to say. I think it's about always trying to localize, trying to get local experiences and trying to create relationships. Another thing, which this is more about focusing on getting them to be interested in what you're doing. Very often what will work is when they learn that you are a good speaker. This is another very, very useful way in, which doesn't relate to press releases, but if there's a national story that comes out and is discussed, a death in custody, for example, and you hear it on, say, a local radio station's news program, what you then do is you get onto a phone-in program that's as close to that news item as you can, and you phone up and you talk about it. Because the other thing that a lot of radio stations and newspapers are interested in, there is a lot of tokenism. Oh, let's get the Black perspective. And then I think what's really useful is that over a period of time, if they get used to you, they get used to your name, they know your phone number, they know the subjects you can talk on, they'll get you involved, by you chipping into their open forums, and they go, the expression is good gabber. They think that one's a good gabber. And when they find a good gabber, something comes up and they go, oh, well, let's find out what, this community groups take on it is, or ethnic groups take on it is, and then they'll phone you. And that's the other way around of creating interest. It's about them getting to know you as well as about you getting to know a journalist. And it's kind of safer if you get on their good gabbers list. So I don't know if that's helpful. So
Nina has a question.
Fire away.
Sometimes we don't know how to scream from the top of the lungs because we're not doing it for the attention. Like, we've not learned to use the media because we know the media doesn't respond to us. But what we've learned over the past now, or even with the Kill the Bill campaign and some BLM, is really just honing in on what you just said, some of the things you said there, like building those relationships, finding other ways to get into the room, as you said, Facebook groups. But like, I think this is where building those allyship and building your media team, where those research can be done even before you do even the smallest action, whether it's a Twitter storm or whatever it is, of why you're doing it. And people then come. I know I have to speak through that privilege of, like, I've got a really good team in KTB and BLM that are mixed, that can help me do some things, but it's very hard for our groups. So maybe one of the suggestions is, even this group that we have here now, if we can create like almost like a Signal group or WhatsApp group where we can share content with each other and kind of just say, and maybe what you can get out of this is that network of other people who are invested in you, who can then potentially look at their own media list and try and send things through for you. I don't know, that's a suggestion I just wanted to put out there as a way forward.
I've got some stuff for you guys to work on as well. I've got a kind of a template, if you like, that you can work on. But I do think working together is good. I think supporting each other good. I also think that an awful lot of media work is very, very often done absolutely at the last minute. And really, it needs to be, if you can get the message in place first, know absolutely clearly what the message is. And the message has to be different every time, which is very difficult to create. So I think getting a message out, making sure your message is different, making sure that everybody localizes things. If you don't localize things, it's not going to get covered. Even if it is significant to a huge part of the population, it's just not going to get in your local media unless you localize it.
Joe, you're so right, because The Voice told us that same thing, because I think we sent the message, our press release to The Voice newspaper, which is like the first Black newspaper in the UK, like 2 days before. And I picked up the phone to speak to them, and I got a bollocking in the sense of like, if you really wanted us to really cover this story, how come you gave it to white people first before you gave it to us? Like, we want to cover it, so we just didn't know it was happening. So I think fostering those relationships and sending things to our community. And what I learned from them was that I need you to just speak like you're speaking to Black people. You can't speak, your press release for us is going to be different from what you're sending to The Guardian. We don't really care if you're talking about, it sounds horrible because we don't really care about the other problems what GRT community, our readers are not going to jump onto it. But if you say Black and brown bodies are going to be stopped and searched because of the police and crime sentencing bill and linking it to the nationality bill, then we have a conversation and they go, maybe you don't even talk about the nationality. In 2 weeks' time, you come and do another piece on nationality to just give us an update. So that was one of our learnings that we learned maybe 2 weeks ago. And we didn't know that sending things in that late because we think about our press release after we've done everything sometimes in our mind.
Yes, absolutely. And it's because it's not the normal thing to do. You don't normally contact the media. So, but absolutely. And that's great to hear you say that. Absolutely great to hear you say that. Is a perfect example of how not to do it. But yes, you've learned so much from that and probably created really good relationships as a result of saying, thank you, I've learned that. So perfect, absolutely perfect. And the other thing that you've said I'd really like to pick up and absolutely emphasize is you do not send the same press release to everybody. You just don't. And I get onto that later in this talk as well. You don't send the same press release to The Sun that you send to The Guardian. You don't send the same press release to the BBC local radio station as you do to your local Muslim station. You just don't. You write specific things for specific audiences, and you write specific things for specific areas. So yeah, absolutely. Because if you don't, it's not going to get picked up. So thank you. Any more queries? Shall we dash on?
Go ahead.
Okay. Right then, so headlines that, as I hope that was good discussion. Hopefully you'll see headlines not going to do absolutely everything, but it's the whole story in one sentence. It's important to get it right. So yeah, that's the headline side of things. And then we moved on to the 5WH, didn't we? So 5WH, whether you're writing a wedding invitation or a press release or a jumble sale advert, you need to have the 5 W's: who, what, when, where, why. If they're not in, you've missed something out, and how many times you've seen a poster printed and then somebody's had to go, oh, I need to put the day in, I forgot to put the day in. So put all 5 of those in. Sometimes you need to put an H in, and that's a how are you doing. And the other thing that I bang on about constantly, people who are more used to using the media never put an involve in, and it's bonkers. Involve is how can we get interested members of the public to find out more, or turn up to an action, or sign a petition, or attend a Zoom, or send an email to their MP or something. So really massively important that you include all of those. They're really boring. Making those interesting is, you just need to learn how to make them short, not how to make them interesting. But those are things that you do need to think through. So if you can think in your head 5WHI, and everything that you write needs to have all of those in, and never forget the involve. It's all very well us filling up pages. Well, hopefully we can fill up pages of the stuff that we're doing if we don't actually involve them. We don't just want to produce copy for journalists. We want to actually bring about social change. That is our job. So, and tips for writing a press release. Um, they're written in, they're quite formulaic. So the headline kind of has got to be the whole story, really, of the press release. You should be able to chop off everything underneath the headline and still understand pretty much what's going on. And at any point throughout the press release, you should be able to cut it off and you still understand the whole story. It's quite difficult writing like this, but each paragraph will give you more information in more detail. It's written in third person. You don't write we, you write Black Lives Matter. You write, whatever it is, whoever you are. And press releases are factual. They're not places for you to write your opinion. The only time that you see the opinion is in the quotes. They're not what you think. They are fact. And the only people who can feel and have opinions are people. Organizations can't have opinions, but people can. And so quotes, which we'll get onto a bit later, are where you put the opinions and the feelings and the passion and the anger and the motivation. That's where they live. And also quite difficult to do, the reading age of your press release needs to be reading age 8 to 9, which is challenging. And so often I see stuff that is written that is way too complicated. The Guardian, a good press release for The Guardian is actually reading age 13. So, and that's not because, nobody can read past reading age 13. It's about speed and, about their ease of them, the journalist comprehending it incredibly quickly without having to stumble over sentences. So that's a few basic how you do your press release. So how a press release functions is the inverted reversed triangle, which is the next slide. I've said the headline attracts the attention but provides insight into the whole story, and the essentially information, the main details of the article, which if you can have marches that block roads, or wheelie bins or dog poo, you put those at the top. They're the interesting stuff. But the main details need to go high up. You put your 5WH stuff very high up. Sorry, no, your 5W stuff. That's the nuts and bolts of what H comes a bit later, because that's, as you go down the press release, it's the important information that's expanding on the essential information. So whilst that's important information, the message is still really clear without this information. And that's where you have your source, your quotes and your sources of other information. Less important information right at the bottom. And that's information that adds to the message. And that's where you might be putting the how in. And it's also very good for people to have information if they want to inquire further. So there are links here to outside resources as well. So at the bottom, you put the name of the press contact and the phone number. So that's the shape, if you like, of your press release.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
When talking about reading age 8 to 9, I'm assuming that also means don't have elaborate, complex sentences and keep things as short as possible. So I just want to confirm, because that's a challenge for me. Also, when you're passionately writing, it can get to be a lot. The other thing is, so under essential information, I think I tend to, in my press releases, put, well, I don't know, it depends. I guess the contact for further info goes at the bottom, but it's like the 5W and the involve that goes in essential, right?
The 5W and the involve you need to make essential. Well, involve, usually you have to tuck lower down because of the shape of how journalists write articles. I'd love it if it was at the top, but sadly the shape of how they write stuff, really it needs to go at the bottom.
Okay, thank you for the
On
clarification.
very local stuff, an awful lot of times you write a good press release, they just copy and paste it and print it. So, and you think if they copy and paste it and print it pretty much and do a bit of extra research, you know you've done a damn good job and you've been lucky.
Now, there's another thing good about the reading age. I know this is going to shock a lot of people. Every press release that's gone out for KTB or UBL or BLM leads, my daughter, who is 10 going 11, reads it. If she can get it, and if she has any questions like, Mom, why is that there? It sounds silly, but I'm promising you that 10-year-old has read every single press release that's gone out and every quote that's gone out and be like, that doesn't make sense, Mommy. Like, what's that then? Like, what's the bill? You're assuming people understand what the Nationality Borders Bill is. And I'm like, oh, they should know. It goes, well, you're telling them about it for the first time, so they can't know. So can you get someone to just say what it is first? So it even means you might change where your spokesperson's quote is based on the storyline that makes sense. And I know that sounds weird, but it has. I've seen it from a 9-year-old and a 10-year-old mind. We're not going to talk about my son who just reads it and says too much words. No.
Can we please all borrow your daughter? That sounds like a perfect solution.
Also, Colin has his hand up. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Martin.
Sorry.
No, Colin should go.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't want to cut you off if you weren't finished. But I love that practice. I feel like I'm going to write it into guidance. Go ahead, Colin.
You're muted, Colin. We can see your mouth move. Muted.
I'm unmuted now. Okay. Is there a tool online to get the reading age of a piece of text?
Yes, there are websites that you can submit your press release to. Great question. That will tell you the reading age of it. I can include that in the materials that I send out. Make a note.
Okay. Fantastic. And another quick one. The how item in the formula. What do you mean by how?
How are you going to go? It doesn't fit all subjects that land up in a press release. How are you going to go about doing this? How do you do this? So for some things that you do, there might not be a how. So we're going to do this and this. How are you going to do this, this and this? So.
If it's XR, you will have a how.
But no, it's handy. Thanks. Good question. But sometimes that bit is in brackets, the how. The H is sometimes in brackets.
Okay. Yeah.
Sorry, the how can also be your social impact, like in a way, or almost the we're going to block the roads to raise awareness about X, Y, and Z air pollution qualities in Edmonton, and I don't know if that, Joe, I might be just spinning out stuff here, but would that qualify as how or?
Sorry, I'm really sorry. I was just shoving my bag of frozen peas over my router. I'm really sorry.
No problem. So I was saying the how could be more around the social impact measures of how the event's going to be run or something like that, or what the impact of the event is meant to achieve. That's what
it could be. Yeah, it could be that. Yeah, absolutely, it could be, and it could be just a bigger expression, a bigger investigation into the subject that you're discussing. So yeah, totally. So it could lead into the involve. It could be, how do we do something? It can lead into the involve. How do you contact your MP? Whatever it is.
Yeah.
So if we can move on onto quotes. I haven't been able to follow stuff that's in the chat very much, but I have just glanced about people being anonymous. In local media and stuff, anonymity doesn't generally work very well. The only way in which you can maintain anonymity is by is if somebody's got a very good reason to be anonymous, and people do have very good reasons to be anonymous, is to say name and address supplied by request. That's totally acceptable. But if it is always name and address supplied by request, it doesn't have the same kind of impact. You're better off really if you can get people to voice stuff who are prepared to be out there, because the media don't like to be kept in the dark. They don't want it to be thought that somebody doesn't really exist. They like to know that they're reporting the truth, which is a joke, but they do. That's the theory. So I say they don't like people to make things up. Boris Johnson got sacked for making quotes up when he was then. And what am I going to tell you to do right now? I'm going to tell you not to let the people necessarily write their own quotes. I'm going to say, if you're writing a press release, your best bet probably is to write the quotes and then ask for people who are prepared to voice them and allow them to tweak them and okay them until they feel comfortable with that quote. So don't just let people randomly quote stuff, because you'll land up with something that isn't as tightly crafted as it needs to be. And who the media introduction is the name, the job, the age, the area they live. Those four things are what you will see. The media introduction is going to be how you see that quote is voiced in a local paper. You have to write quotes as spoken language, not as written language. That's where you put your feelings, your motivations, your opinions, your passions. And I would say don't waste facts in quotes, because they can't be hyperlinked, which is what you do. Remember back on the message, find your fact, give the quotes, hyperlink the sources of the facts. Some broadcast outlets do like facts in quotes because they think it shows that the speaker is informed. But frankly, having worked in broadcast, it really doesn't tell you anything of the sort. It just tells you they've done some research or somebody has done some research. And actually being a good speaker is much more important to a broadcast outlet. And what makes a good speaker is somebody who's good at doing feelings. So we'll move on to the next page, which is, where are we? Oh, it's an example of a quote. So this is a very long, rambly quote here. And I've deliberately done that because if you get a publication who you do land up having a good relationship with, you can give them a big, long, rambly quote and they'll print it. If it's somebody you know you work harder with, you give them a shorter quote. So I've deliberately here tried to pick out the yellow bit for the longer quote, add that bit in for the publication that's on side. The shorter quote is the more essential stuff. We need to think as well, who is the person doing the talking? And deliberately here, I've chosen a doctor, I've chosen a woman, and I've chosen the name Kulvinder. Well, the person, Kulvinder, sorry, the person. Because this way, you're saying a lot about who is part of your organisation. So, pick your quotes carefully. There's another quote here, does the same thing, somebody who's older, a short version, a long version. And getting the passion in there is what we need to do. So what I'm not going to do now, I was going to, but we've had some very useful discussion. I'm going to let you have a quick look at this lot rather than actually starting it, because particularly you guys from Black Lives Matter, Kill the Bill, I would like perhaps to do some work with you rather than just rambling at you, because I think that would probably be more useful. But I've got a kind of a how-to version, massively simplified, how to write a press release, a kind of a fill in the blanks, if you like, which I will put into chat now. And that is, hang on, that needs to go here. Sorry, I am the world's slowest at this. And this goes to everyone in the meeting. Okay, that is your, that's a more Kill the Bill angled one. And this is one that I have had for Extinction Rebellion, long time. Look at both of them. And they're both kind of, they're very, very similar. They're just fill in the blanks, these. But for this, if you wanted to have, to copy these links, put them on a Google document or something, and have a quick look through all of that lot. And I am also going to send a bit of a hybrid version here, which is an Extinction Rebellion press release about Kill the Bill. And that's one that we wrote and we sent. And I'll get back and I'll show you the result of doing that. So have a look at those, and don't worry about the bit after on the fill in the blanks bit, the first two links that I've put in chat. Don't worry too much about the bit after ends, where it says ends. We're going to talk about that bit next. So have a look through the body, the headline, and the body of the text release down to ends. And then if anybody's got any questions, I'll take those questions.
Just wanted to say it's always great to have your spokespeople ready, the ones that would be the face of the campaign and are going to say things. So the bigger, sometimes it sounds really cheeky, the bigger the quote the person is, sometimes it matters, sometimes it doesn't, but making it really personal. So if I know I've got Shemu Chakrabarti speaking, I'm going to come as a mother. I will come as a mother, a worker. I would then look at the angle that I'm scared of for that future. So and you'd be surprised, sometimes my quotes are cut down and made to fit into a way that is more palatable various times. So do not get offended don't get too precious about your words. Just think about the fact you want it to be read and comprehended by the people and used to effect change. So it's not about you. And sometimes you might not even be the spokesperson. So you might need to get somebody else, and it's okay for you to check that ego in that corner and then say, I'm going to get someone else's face that would be who has the 10,000 hours of expertise in that role to really echo the movement for me. I just wanted to say that. So just think about that in how you write. So the coalition idea of saying that I'm working with various people and all of them are agreeing what I'm saying here, and they're going to be taking action with me, sometimes sounds better than we from the community feel this. It sounds horrible to say that, but when you then say imagine you're talking about Black Lives Matter, but then you're showing that the Jewish community have decided to give a quote to say they really do not, they want to end racism and they stand in solidarity with Black people. Sometimes that quote would actually be picked up quicker than if it was me talking, sometimes, most times, just saying.
No, excellent points. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Shall I go to next slide?
Okay, no other questions?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. Excellent. Okay. Yes, please. Next slide, please. Which is actually leading on from something Marvina said. And that is about your spokesperson knowing who, being prepared, knowing exactly what's happening. So excuse the XR language, rebels, your activist who is a press contact. So when it says end, the first thing after end on that fill in the blanks press release, massively simplified press release, which works fine, by the way, it might be ridiculously simple, but it works. It says contact, name, phone number. Now, that is the press contact. That's who that person is. From the moment you press send and send your press releases out, that person must be available to answer the phone. Journalists will never wait. So that person has to be absolutely prepared and ready to answer their phone straight away and be able to talk. I'm really sorry, but I can't speak to you now. I'm in a meeting. You've lost your opportunity. That's not going to work. Excuse me, frozen peas. That's better. And the spokesperson must also understand that everything that is said to a journalist is quotable. No matter what you see on the movies, there is no such thing as off the record. Therefore, the person who's speaking to the journalist must have the same kind of mindset as to when you're speaking to the police. Every word that you say is significant. So they really have to have their brain switched on very carefully and know the implications of what they're saying. They also need to know what your message is, the bit over the garden wall, and make sure they actually say the message. They need to do that. Spokespeople often think they need to have loads and loads of facts. Absolutely not. A total maximum of 3 facts, absolute maximum, I would say. 3 facts is enough, because, as has been said, it needs to be the personal stories. They're the things that really do get the message across. And the spokesperson also has to be prepared for so-called stupid questions. And when you get stupid questions that are, I'm much more familiar, I confess, with the climate stupid questions than with the kill the bill questions. They're the climate denying questions. I'm sure you guys know exactly what the kill the bill questions are. So you have to have a very brief answer prepared for the stupid questions to get them out of the way. Never ignore them. Always answer them as briefly as you humanly can, and then take control and go on to say what you want to say, regardless of the questions that you're being asked. So never ignore, but always try and take control of the direction of the interview. Tell stories, put people in your stories, human interest. Stories are good. Try very hard not to use jargon.
Marvina has her hand up.
Sorry, I know I'm just coming here giving examples again. The stupid questions are, I'm just going to address 2 things. So I use the tactic of saying, off the record, yeah, because I know 99% of the time when I say that, my quotes will end up in the newspaper, because literally it works. So I'll be like, actually, so a stupid question came around, well, we realized that the Kill the Bill campaign has not worked with the Stop the Freedom, they actually said the anti-vaxxers, and why have you not given platform to the anti-vaxxers? And I go, as you know, with this campaign, off the record, it doesn't matter who you are. I would love to work with everybody who humanly possible that is going to be affected by this bill. But at the same time, you can't be calling people anti-vaxxers. Is that the name that they've chosen to use? And if they're fighting for their human rights, it's very important for us to look at making sure we defend the right to protest. The left needs to work together. You can use it, but only if you're strong enough to know that you don't get in your feelings and you know that it's a game and you're playing it with them, and you don't get offended. Some people might even say, what about white on black crime? I go, according to what stats? I go, based on that, let's now talk about white on white crime that goes with our publications in this country. At this moment, we're focused on the fact that Black men are more likely to be stopped and searched. You go back to your facts. You don't let yourself be caught off guard saying, you're racist, you're this, how dare you say this? Because in a way, the person already clocks that you're not in that space with them. And you'd be like, well, I don't know about that stuff, but I can tell you from what I know is that from my community and from the records, Black people are 9 times likely to be stopped and searched. And if now this amendment goes through, that means without suspicion, already, they're getting stopped without suspicion because they fit the description. But now, without suspicion means everybody is fair game. So who do you think will be more targeted if you're saying preventing crime? You'll be surprised what they will come to you with. None of them are your friends sometimes. You might then always treat it that these guys are not my friends. What I say will be twisted. So make sure you say you have the same kind of line, irregardless of who's speaking to you. It becomes a rehearsed word of you keep that message clear. So if A speaks to me, I'm saying the same thing to A as I'm saying to B, but you know how to handle it that way. But that's the only thing I wanted to kind of just add there to help anyone.
That is brilliant. Thank you. It's absolutely brilliant. Yeah, and you have your answers absolutely to pat. You have your answers prepared. You know where you're going, and I love your playing the game. This is absolutely playing a game, totally. And the idea of don't quote me because you know it'll end up being quoted. There you go. What a game you're playing. This is great to hear. So congratulations.
Akoyemi also has their hand up, and then me just with something really quick. Go ahead, Akoyemi. I'll unmute you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that it's a great presentation, and my word of advice would be to make sure that you knock every door. And also, as an activist myself, who's gone through the process and also gone through that process of making a press release, I think it's the fact that you make sure you knock every door, and also don't really be know your narrative. And also the important thing is making sure that you be your 100% yourself within it all. Don't feel that anything's kind of out of your remit, in the fact that what your narrative and your passion of what that cause is will basically show the true story for what it is. And that is the most important thing of it all. And I just think that this presentation with the mind maps is really helpful for the neurodiverse community. And I just wanted to say it's a great presentation, and I just wanted to add in my words of advice for other people who are doing press release. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think, Tatiana, would it be okay for us to potentially look at making some of these slides into infographics that can go on KTB for those who might have not been in the space today, to just be able to have like foolproof tips if they wanted to?
Yeah, Joe was willing to share the slideshow, so I'm sure you're fine with that, right, Joe? Awesome. Yeah, happy to do that. And I just want to come in and say that, as Marvina spoke to, like, if I took spokes training with Joe, which is where we met and became friends, and she had discussed the name of the tactic that Marvina was talking about is bridging. So like if they ask you a stupid question, and just like we see politicians do, where you're like, oh, you didn't answer that question though. Like that's because they're bridging. They're twisting whatever was asked them and giving it like a short answer if necessary, or just saying something like, I hear your question, but that's not the issue at hand. What actually matters is, and then going into your prepared statement. Or, maybe that's not the way to say it. I'm sure Joe has a better way, but it depends. Like sometimes you want to respond to it, and then other times, I think that you can just be really agile and always circle back to your own statement.
And one of the good things, sorry, Joe, you don't need to know all the answers. It's okay to say, sorry, I'm not that vastly aware of this content that you're saying. Thank you for bringing it to my attention. I would like to learn some more. So do you want to tell me more about this situation? Again, it's almost like you put it back to them to say, you know what, you've just told me news for the first time. So like, even though you might know the news, or you're like, I don't, well, based on what you've just told me now, I might go and research more, but I don't think I'm at liberty. So I'm going to check my privilege right now and not say something that might be detrimental to someone else's campaign, because all they have is their name. So sorry, I have no information. So that bridging, Tatiana, you were so, by the way, let's celebrate Tatiana for organizing this, because like, it's fascinating that we're here together. Big up Tatiana and Rosie.
Big up you for all your amazing contributions, Miss Marvina. I love having you here.
So I would say on this, if I can come back, always answer the question. I would say always answer the question, because you look slimy and slippery if you don't. But your questions, and listening to Marvina's suggestions, like it's occurred to me, one of the things that I'm sure you've dealt with, well, what about, all lives matter? You need to have your this long answer for all lives matter. And then you take control. But I would say answer the questions, because if you don't answer the questions, you look like a politician. And that's the last thing that any of us want to look like.
Jo, I've got that question so many times.
I bet you have.
And straight away you'd be like, yeah, all life cannot matter until Black Lives Matter. And you would not go to a cancer ward and say all cancers matter when you're in a breast cancer ward. So at this moment, again, let's be able to pay attention. And it always works, because that gets quoted more than you can imagine. As soon as I said all lives cannot matter until Black Lives Matter, it gets quoted. Because that's what I want them to put out there. So that means they're still going to ask that kind of silly question. But to them, it's not silly. That's another thing. For what you might think is silly to us, to them, they honestly do not have any gauge in their mind. They feel like it's a valid question. So it's almost that kind of mutual respect of, if you knew better, you would do better. So you don't. So let me school you in a short way and then move really quickly.
But actually, what they're doing is, it's not they are asking that because they believe it to be a valid question. More often than not, they're asking the stupid questions because they believe their audience want to think it's a valid question. So actually, they are being the voice of who they think their audience is. So you're not actually telling the journalist, you're telling the listener, which is why it's so important. Because if you have got a bunch of listeners sitting at the, sitting in their car in their traffic jam or whatever it is, thinking, yeah, but all lives matter, unless you can come up with a good answer for the listener, then they're not going to hear the next bit that you say, which is why it's so important to do that. And a journalist can come across as being really racist, bigoted, ignorant, but actually, ironically, sometimes it's their role to be that. I mean, unfortunately, they rely on it too heavily, and it's very lazy journalism. But if you get asked stupid questions, welcome them, because until everybody has heard a good answer who is a bigot, they're not going to be able to get over their bigotry and hear the next thing that you want to say. So.
And you need to paint a picture. You need to, when you talk, you need the person listening or reading it to almost go into like this film zone in their head where they can visualize what you're talking about. So with the all life matter conversation, I remember me saying, can you imagine if your house was on fire? And imagine me standing in the middle of a road and saying, sorry, all houses need to be watered right now. While they're pouring waters on all the houses, your house burns down. And that's what all houses matters looks like. And straight away, that sits that picture of their house and everything they love inside burning and nobody coming to them. That has made a lot of right-wing newspapers, believe it or not, that I couldn't believe that they even ended up using, just because that scenario was there in their mind.
Right. I think we've done quite a bit more on spokes than I thought we would, but it's been really valuable. Thank you so much. So that's the job of the person who's the contact at the end. So, but in addition to that, let's move on to images. Oh, you're on it, Tatiana. Images. This is another great way, the whole thing about a picture speaks 1,000 words. Well, images are a great way to get stuff on. Pictures of people carrying banners with your message and significant facts, and genuinely funny placards, this kind of thing. This is the kind of photograph that local papers like. On the left-hand side, anybody who lives in North Nottinghamshire or Nottinghamshire will know just from looking at that picture, that wonky shaped spire, that it's Chesterfield. You don't need to say where it is. It's Chesterfield. Everybody knows that. And it's localized. They want local stuff. So that's a good local picture. And they like lots of faces smiling at the camera, or lots of faces busy, focused on something, a speaker, or lots of faces doing interesting things. So both of these photographs tick those boxes. And they like interesting shots of stuff, really. It's a bit weird, lots of people standing outside the Nottinghamshire County council building, that kind of thing. The messages are so important. On the right hand side, the green flag says "changes now," which is not a great message. It really isn't. But it was immediately after COVID, which is why that's there. Which is why your message is so important. Your message has to be right. Changes now is a bit meaningless, really. You say changes now over the fence to somebody, it didn't mean a great deal. So that's worth bearing in mind. But those are the, that's one way of getting a lot of information across. And the important thing as well that we've got in XR Nottingham is we've got a lot of banners with contact details on. So if you can get a photograph of that banner in the paper, even if the paper doesn't print your contact details, they probably will print that photograph. I think they did. And so you can get your contact details across on a banner. So it's worth thinking, how am I going to get my visuals there? The next images slides shows photos of the people who were in the middle of the three people who were walking. The one in the middle has a significant fact placard. And she is quoted in the press release that went out with that particular action. If you're going to take photographs of people, general public, you can get the backs of their heads unless it's very obviously a crowd shot. Crowd shots, you can get away with faces, that's not a problem. But if it's specifically a picture of that person, either it needs the back of the head if you don't have permission, or it needs to be an activist who is prepared to be named. The press love photographs of children, but you have to have permission from the parents if you want to send a photograph of a child to the press. And you also have to put permission to publish, because you can't go around photographing kids without permission. I'll show you how you send your photographs in a bit, but you title the photographs with the names of the people in them. You don't call it JPEG X132759. It's called Katie, who gave a quote. Katie, but I think Katie Butterfly Facts, I think it was, or something like that. I can't remember. You credit the photographer. You keep photographs, or you write no credit necessary. You keep photographs that are good off social media until your local media has had a chance to use them. If they don't use them within that day, you print them. But they like to have first bite of the cherry. And send your photographs to a drive. Send them to a Google Drive, which means that you have less stuff that you land up cluttering up your press release with. And to give you an idea of how that particular those photographs went with this press release, I've put a link in the chat, and that will show you how we landed up actually sending those images to the press. Timing, really important. A press release is not a diary item. You don't send it a week before the action unless you're going to land up speaking to a publication who are likely to want to engage with you properly. So sadly, you found with the Voice, they said, why are you telling us now? They would have researched it, put some more stuff in. If it's going to a specialist radio station, again, you might want to give that to them in advance. But it's not a diary item, it's a news release. So for the mainstream media, it gets sent out according to when it's appropriate to send it out. So we call stuff spicy if the police are going to want to know about it. So, oh, hang on. I've just been told that URL didn't go to everybody. Here we go. Let's try again. That is the link to the Dropbox with all the photographs in it. Right. Hopefully you've got it. There. It's on the images, but obviously you can't access it off the image, but you can access it out of, yes, it's through, that's good. Okay. So if it's spicy, which means if it's not legal, you don't want it to get out before you've actually had a chance to make the action happen. So it depends on what your action is as to when you send stuff out. If something is not illegal, then it's probably the day before or a bit of time before the deadline if you're talking to a weekly, because they work a lot slower and they have far fewer journalists actually working on the paper. If it's breaking news, local media love breaking news. It means it's happening right now. And so if you're doing a march through town, they love breaking news because they can put updates on their website, and it's like, oh, the march has now turned into Mansfield Road and Mansfield Road is blocked, and oh, the march has now turned into this and now this road is blocked. So you can send stuff from your phone to update them permanently during something. That's called breaking news. They love that. So you can send a press release, then send breaking news. A retrospective is often very good if you had a good action, especially if you've got some good photographs, a good event, but the press didn't pick it up, then send it to them anyway. Just go through your press release, put it into past tense and send it with a whole lot of photographs. And often things will get picked up after the event, which is better than not at all. And if it's spicy, if it's going to be something illegal, you need to do a mixture of, hang on, hot internet. Ooh, very hot internet.
I was going to say, yeah, switch out your P's. Amazing. And now your internet's fine on my end.
Good. Yeah, it's surrounded in frozen peas now. Yeah, so if it's spicy, you need to make sure that you've set up and things are happening, that people are in the positions they need to be in and everything's okay and the police haven't stopped you and it's all actually happening now. So then you send it as breaking news, or maybe you send it as retrospective as well as that. So there's your timing strategy. And after print or broadcast, it's this document refers to rebels, apologies for that, but activists, any activist. If you can follow up articles, makes a heck of a difference. If stuff's printed or broadcast, it might well be on the social media of a radio station, on the Twitter, on the Facebook page or whatever. Get any activist to share that article from the media's page. That's really important. Don't send it in a chat, an activist chat, then everybody shares it from the chat. Get everybody to share it to their family from the page of the publication, because that means there's been a lot of interaction on that page and they'll be more interested in covering it. So that's a really important job for activists to do after a broadcast or a print success. Never read the comments unless you've got a lot of time and a lot of people to deal with them and a team to respond. It can be a great way to engage, but it can also be very tough and it can also be profoundly demoralizing. And a job for the person who's in charge of organising press releases to do is to thank good journalists. Makes a heck of a difference. And that's also how you can get onto your Good Gabbers page. Because, and if they do a fantastic job, send them a card, with a stamp on the envelope, stick it in the post, because everyone likes getting cards. And if they really genuinely did a good job, they can put it on their desk and they go, oh, I did a good job there. Oh, and it's from that nice person. And then the next time that subject comes up, they go, oh, that nice person. And you're more likely to get on the Good Gabbers list for them. So that is your important bit. I am going to jump through engaging politicians because I'll just very briefly say, quote politicians in your press releases, source the quotes, discover what their arguments are, counter those arguments in your press release. And with luck, you can land up getting good engagement over a period of time in a paper. Another good way of doing that is to use the letters page. You don't just have to use press releases, you can use the letters page. You can respond to articles. I mentioned earlier, you can use phone-ins, but if you can engage local people who may make, may have policy, may have control, may have, engage with them. Someone has raised their hand.
Yeah, Muna Hassan.
Muna, thank you.
Hi everyone. Thank you, Joe. This is really amazing, and I've learned so much. But I'm totally new to this, so excuse me if this sounds like a really dumb question. But what is a good gabble list?
Sorry, mention that early on. Good gabber. No, and thank you for asking. There's no such thing as a stupid question. Not here. If you're a good talker, it's about creating relationships over a period of time. If you're a good talker and you've got an opinion and you've got some facts and you've got some knowledge and you're interested, they'll think, that one can talk about this subject. Oh, okay. So they go, hang on, this story has come in. We need to talk about this story. Oh, it'd be interesting to get this angle on that story. Oh, what's the Muslim attitude towards this? What's the experience of this? And you're on their good gabbers list. Right. So that's so thank you for chipping in with that one.
No, I got it. That makes sense why they keep, when you watch something like GMTV, like you keep seeing regular people come back on different issues. Got it. Makes sense. Thank you.
Exactly. And
the thank you. The thank
journalists are always looking for them. No, thanks. Good question. Thank you.
The thank yous work too. Like I've seen some really brilliant articles written, and even you just giving someone a personal call to say, what, that piece was so amazing. Thank you so much. You'll be surprised how for them it's like they don't hear thank you. They hear people cussing them out all the time. So like, just say thank you if it's a good piece. Even if you don't like it, sometimes you can just say, well, thank you for actually publicizing that information for me. Can I give you some some feedback? Some of them will say yes, and some might say no, but most of the time you might get someone like wanting to still engage with you in a conversation, maybe.
Yeah, which is great.
Sorry, can I just ask, how do you usually go about doing that? What is the best method? Do you do that through social media, like tweeting them, or actually giving them a call? What do you do, Mavina?
So when we had the amendment, I noticed that my picture then got used so many times. So exactly what Joe said, I literally reposted from Instagram pages that they had already posted, linking them and saying thanks, like with the voice. I remember me saying, first shared it on my story and just saying, oh my gosh, I've always looked up to the Voice newspaper to like learn about my community. I can't believe I'm now the news on there. Thank you so much. Next day, I had the editor calling me saying, oh, that was really lovely. And then 2 days later, I then posted it on my page. They've got thousands of followers and I've got minuscule. But the fact of me just acknowledging them on that post was something that they felt was really appreciative. If you've got their direct contact numbers of the person that interviewed you, is sometimes I do this. I don't know other people if they do, but I find some time to just call people if I can and just say, well, really appreciate you coming to take a picture or like record us on the day. I really appreciate it. Let me know how I can be of service to you. Like next time, if you needed any help. Again, they're not used to people saying, how do I support you? Again, so I think that's helped me nurture a lot of relationship and make friendships with your photographers because they've got access to a lot of media outlets. So a lot of my photographers or people that come, I'm always saying thank you to them from the podium. And what happens is that they then directly send you messages and your pictures if used in articles, even before they get released. So, you know, sometimes, I don't know, Joe, if that's true, but like my photographers or independent freelance photographers sometimes have access in spaces that you would never know they're going to sell your pictures to.
It makes sense. That's why you have such a powerful images. Sorry.
Yeah. And I think somebody's also chipped in, and filmmakers, this is true. Although very often what you do get in locally, which is a bit frustrating, is you can find a freelancer who just wants to get a photograph in as early as possible because they get paid. And if a local press pays for a freelance photograph, the first photograph that goes off. So actually we've got some freelancers who we deliberately don't tell because they will send a rubbish photograph, it gets used and we can't get any decent photographs in. So this is why your media list needs to be a working document, because there are ones who we deliberately don't involve because they might have good connections with the press, but they'll send some rubbish in and we want something decent in. So I am overrunning. I think this is the first time this has ever happened, but there have been some very good discussions here. I want to really rapidly dash through this. This next, I'm going to give you here. This is an example of, I don't know what the heck it's an example of. Oh, I do, yes. The press release that I gave you earlier, this is an example of a very, very local publication and what happens using a very local publication. We sent out the press release, which you've got earlier in the chat. This link takes you to a ridiculously local site, and you can see how the fact that there are two people there quoted who are very local for that area is significant. And this next picture, which is engaging politicians and going local, you'll see that picture. Again, this is why having a really carefully crafted picture is so important. You'll see that there are 4 people holding 4 signs. Those signs have been very carefully designed. This picture we used for the mainstream media in the city of Nottingham, which covers 3 MPs around the outside and 3 MPs in the middle. And the signs that are held by the different protesters relate to the different areas. So the woman holding the drum with the yellow sign lives in the same area as the very local newspaper article that I've just sent out. And that a picture just of her and a quote just from her went out to the Gedling Eye, and with just her sign and not the others, because it's a local activist and a local thing going to London. And we also had somebody doing, someone can't see the link. Let me send it again. I don't know if that's sent it again. I don't think it has sent it again. Let's try again. There we go. Right. That's through. I can see it through. No, thank you for putting that in there. So making things incredibly local. I can't emphasize personalizing things is so important. And so each press release is personalized for each area, and never send the same press release out to very, very local stuff if you're aiming for very, very local coverage. Really rapidly, things that pop up quite often, questions that pop up quite often are embargoes. Should I use them? I would say only if absolutely strictly necessary. And only use them if you absolutely trust your journalist. I don't necessarily trust journalists. Probably most of us don't. But use embargoes if you absolutely have to. It might be a good thing, like if you're sending something to The Voice, you could ask them to embargo it if you wanted to, and so you could work with them before you talk to the rest of the mainstream media. As well as letters and phone-ins, there's also a statement to the press. A statement to the press.
What do embargoes mean?
Oh, thank you. Good question. Thank you.
I know what they mean, but a lot of people here aren't.
Yes. Yes, you're right. It means, please, I'm telling you, but please don't print this or tell anybody right now. Thank you. Excellent question. Yeah. Statement to the press is much easier to write than a press release. It's just, you don't have to craft it as carefully. It's giving them some stuff that they can use, and you can write it as an organization. An organization is writing a statement, and you can put some stuff in there, some facts, some, and it's very useful if you think they're going to cover this anyway, and they might want to put something from us in there as well. Swearing, that's another thing I'm asked about quite often. And that is, I would say, for local press, don't. I know a lot of Extinction Rebellion stuff that comes out is very into swearing, but the local press is generally really quite conservative, and they don't like it. So don't waste a word that is not going to get used. Put in another word that will be used. So it's 6 minutes late. This is the first time it's ever happened to me. So has anybody got any other questions before we call it a night? And I say thank you for your patience, and I'm so sorry we've overrun. So, but any other questions?
Just that you're amazing and really appreciate you. And you only ran late because of probably me asking and talking a lot. So thank you, Joe. Thank you, Tatiana. And thanks to everybody.
Thank you, Joe. Really good value.
Really
Thank you. I'm delighted. I'm available whenever I can be. I'm more than happy if I can help out if people have got specific questions and queries. And I'd be very interested in helping you work out why the hell the mainstream press is ignoring a lot of stuff. That is something I would love to get my teeth into. So please coordinate.
Joe, we're going to tackle you down and use you so much. So don't open that door. Well,
I was going to say, how can we get hold of your contacts? Just to ask, I've just got one or two questions to ask you personally. Is that all right?
Yeah, of course it is. Probably. I'll tell you what we'll do. I know Tatiana's going to send some stuff out. We can put my chat on it. Unfortunately, the NHS is going to get hold of me shortly and do vile things to me. So if I'm
not today, it's fine. I didn't mean
no, before Wednesday would be great.
Okay. That'd be great.
But also I shall be lying around groaning for quite some time, and it'd be great to do something useful that I enjoy. So please get in touch with me, and I'll do everything I can to help. Personal questions, we'll get that information out to you as fast as possible, and yeah, ask me questions, and if there's a bit of a delay on the reply, you'll know why, but I'll try and get on to you as fast as possible.
Can we create a signal group then? Joe, you're just a superstar, and I'm looking at you and just thinking brilliant that you're offering all this support for us. But it might be really great for us to, if everybody's okay with a thumbs up icon, who's happy to be in a signal group where we can try and support each other and create our own media in the process and learn from each other. So even though Joe might be resting, someone in the group might be able to help you while in that time. Okay, we're loving all the thumbs up. You guys are amazing. I'm just looking for people to support me, really. Sorry. That's the honest truth.
No, same. No, this is all new to me. So thank you so much, guys. And all the questions and all the inputs that everybody else gave really helped. So I'm grateful. Thank you for this space.
Lovely group to work with. Great. I love all the stuff coming. Brilliant. So that's great. And I've got one plea from all of you. The only way that I can make these kinds of things better is by getting good feedback. And Tatiana has put in the chat, please share your feedback on this training at. I know from experience, if you do it now, you'll do it. And that if you think you'll do it tomorrow, you won't. So I'd be really grateful if I can be cheeky and ask you to go to that link and just let us know what was useful. And then, because I'm going to try and turn this talk into something for Rebellion Academy as well. And if I can tweak it and change it, brilliant. And also the feedback, talking to you people by the Signal group, finding out what's really been going on, I can maybe tailor something better as well that is specifically good for groups that are very marginalized. I've been really, really into doing that.
While everyone's doing that, Gordon actually has his hand up. So Gordon, would you like to ask your question?
Actually, I'm using the question just to say thank you very much indeed. And Marvina, your inclusion has made it just so much better. Thank you very much for both of you. Possibly one of the best training things I've ever been in.
Oh.
Cheers.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you. And thank you, Marvina. And thank you, all of you, actually. Very good group to work with.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say from the bottom of my heart,
appreciated.
Thank you, Joe, because as she said, the NHS will be getting a hold of her next week. And like, I have been trying just to, engage in friend chat with her and not like, can you do stuff chat? And I feel so grateful that in the midst of everything that you've come and done this training for us. It's incredibly invaluable because the next steps to the policing bill and killing all the other bills that we're after will involve outreach to local press, right? Because a lot of it is MP focused and not just Lords focused. So it can only be their constituents writing letters. And it means we need to educate those constituencies, which might not already be on side with these kinds of engagements. So like, I can't tell you how much you're supporting the movement and how grateful I am as a friend. And thank you, Joe. Thank you also everyone for being here.
And Joe, you can't believe the way Tatiana talks about you. She's like your biggest hype woman in this world. Really, I can't tell you. I literally had to just come into this space, no matter what I was doing, just so I can show solidarity and support to your wonderful soul. So at least it's still recording. My dyslexic son can't give a feedback that nice. But Colin's got their hand up.
I think
thank you. Just a very quick one. There's a kind of a chain of regional community citizen newspapers, which has got links to our pro-European outfit, but they're much more broadly cross-campaign based, the Bylines Network. And they have a tremendous appetite for content of the kind that we produce here. I don't know if they're habitually on the received list, but I can share the email addresses offline if that would be useful. Okay.
Please do that. Thank you. That'd be great if you could put them, because they might not be in all those other things. That'd be great if Tatiana can add those to the document that's going out to you. Brilliant. Thank you, Colin. Thank you.
Thanks. No problem. Tatiana, have you got the Signal group ready for people to join if they wanted to? For like,
I don't have it ready just because I've been like managing sort of this, but I can try to get it up. I was just asking people to also email me, but I can set one up now with like you, me, and Joe, and then share a link potentially while people are filling out the form.
Please do fill out your feedback because we want Joe to see all the lovely things you have to say.
I promise you I've got feet of clay as well. You know.
Love you, Joe.
What does that mean, feet of clay? Tell the American, sorry.
I'm not completely made of gold.
Oh. Shall use that next time when I want to sound fancy. Sorry.
Right, so I've got the, it's called KTV Collab Media Chat, and I'm going to be sending the link into the chat right now.
And Tatiana, you're just a star.
Ask and you shall receive, my goddess friend.
I'll be honest to you, it's a blessing to work with teams like this.
Likewise, it's an honor and pleasure to work with you.
Excuse me, I don't know you guys, but this is a very Extinction Rebellion, yeah expression. So absolutely, it's been lovely to work. Thank you.
All right. Well,
so did you say did you send the? Oh, you sent it.
Girl, I'm on it. I got you.
Wow. Okay, this is so effective. Okay, so hopefully most of you join into that group. At least then you get contacts, direct access. See, all the people that didn't come to the training don't get direct access to all of us. Now you do.
Sorry, is that in the chat? Yeah. I was just doing the feedback.
Yeah, it's in the chat. So if you just
I would say I just saw it at the last minute, 5 minutes before you were starting on Facebook, and I was like, damn it, I cannot miss that. And I was simultaneously having to zip to the shop and out in the car. And so I was like, you're